Hello?
Hey there.
Hey
Hey,
there.
Doug.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Johnson.
Hey, Fred.
Dr. Taylor, how are you?
I'm fine, sir. Hope you're doing well.
Very well.
Hey guys, can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All right,
sir.
good deal. Okay. Are we getting it? Yeah, okay. Okay. anybody joining from central office?
Yes, sir. Pam Boljak, myself, Lynette Moore, and Karen Barker are in the boardroom, social distancing.
Okay. Okay.
And Mr. Rose and Anna McGee are in their offices at the central office as well.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. I just didn't know if we were in the boardroom or not. Dr. Rice, can you see which one of the board members are on? Because it's just showing me 3 phone numbers. One of them is mine.
I believe that the one ending in 01 is Miss Tedder. I'm sorry, 01 is Fred Johnson. The one in 92, ending in 92 is Miss Tedder, and the one ending in 30 is you. And we just had a new one enter. I'm not sure who that is now because we have 4 numbers.
We don't know who 04 is.
I do not know whose phone number ends in 04.
Okay.
And they're muted. Michael Sands is on 04. His computer has a technical difficulty with a microphone, so he is called in on 04 so that he can speak if needed.
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. So we got Mr. Johnson, Miss Tedder, and myself.
And Pat Messick is on the computer as well. We're still waiting on Miss Knight.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to text Carol to see if she's going to be able to join us. It's not letting me.
And Miss Messick just left the meeting, it said, but she's now back.
I'm so happy when all this is over. Okay, well, we haven't heard from this night. It's 6 o'clock. We have 3 board members, so we have a quorum. So we'll go ahead and, for those that would like to join me, via prayer and social distance. Please do so at this time. Dear gracious and Heavenly Father, this is the time when we come to you for spiritual leadership and guidance. Lead us and direct us in what's best. Help those that are fighting this COVID-19, those on the front lines, and those that are in support. We ask your wisdom and your healing hands lay upon those affected and upon all our students as we all struggle to educate. We ask your prayers and guidance for the educators, the faculty, and staff that are doing a remarkable job at this time, and we thank you for that, and we just ask for your spiritual wisdom and guidance for us all. For it's in your name we pray, amen. All right, 601, I'm going to call it to order. Dr. Rice, per your suggestion, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, great. We're officially in session. Ms. Messick, can you hear us? And are you able to?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I got you. I just wanted to make sure everybody could go.
Yes, I'm here. I've been here.
Okay. At this time, I'll ask for the approval of the agenda. Do we have any additions?
Mr. Rogers,
Yes.
that Qualtrics pack was put in our, that questionnaire was put in our packet, but it's not on the agenda. I didn't know if it was your intention to have that as a discussion item or what, sir.
Ms. Jessup, was that in for just us to review prior to discussing it, or what was the intention on the delivery?
Mr. Rogers, this is Ms. Jessup speaking here. The intent was for the board to review the sample questions as you format the questionnaire you find necessary for Stokes County School District.
Okay. Ms. Messick and Ms. Tedder, have y'all had an adequate time to review it, or do you want to bring that to the work session?
Well, this is Pat Messick. I did review it. I don't think that it's very clear on a lot of the questions are not clear. They have, I think people filling it out would have trouble understanding who they're referring to when they say my director, or they say senior leadership. You know, it needs to be more clear on who they're answering the questions about. And that's my opinion. I don't feel like the survey itself is clear to anybody that would be filling it out.
Okay, Ms. Tedder, what's your feeling?
I tend to concur with Ms. Messick on this. Some kind of definition or glossary of the roles would be helpful to especially new teachers and staff who don't quite know, you know, if we're discussing a director, does that mean a central office staff? Does that mean a department level director within the school system? So I think it would be more clear if we, or it'd be more helpful if we could define some roles in there.
Okay, do y'all want to add it to discussion in E, or do you want, or in F as discussion item F? Or do you want to, Ms. Jessup, would it be better for you to take that initial feedback and work on it and submit it at the work session?
Mr. Rogers and board, this is Ms. Jessup speaking again. I will be glad to carry this feedback to the gentleman representing Qualtrics and bring that to you at the work session if you would like.
Okay. Is that good with you two or you ladies? 'Cause I'm not sure. Now, Miss Barker, Miss Knight just texted me back saying she was waiting for the invite. So could you resend it to her? Or reach out to her and tell her it was in that email? She may not be able to get that link.
Regarding the survey, Ms. Jessup, it may be helpful. Well, thank you for offering to take that back to the gentleman, but he'll need help with who's who and how to define those roles. I mean, we got to put ourselves in the reader's position, you know, at the school
All right,
level
then.
person position.
Here's what I'm going to suggest. Let's make it item F so we can go ahead and start initial feedback. And then we will, that way we can discuss it. We can get this agenda approved. We can discuss it and then send it back for review. So y'all are in favor of adding it to item F, Qualtrics? We'll get the agenda approved.
I move to approve the agenda with adding discussion item F of the Qualtrics questionnaire.
Ms. Messick, you want to second it?
I second it.
Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. So moved. Ms. Barker, did you get my request to reach out to Ms. Knight? Okay, I see she just.
I just resent it.
Okay, thank you. Good news?
Yes, sir. We have some great news. As you have in your packet, on Sunday, March 15th, Governor Cooper gave schools guidelines and guidance across the state that he had three main priorities during the COVID-19 crisis. One was to develop a feeding program for children in our county and across the state. And the second was to provide childcare for essential personnel. And the third was to develop remote distance learning for students from at that time, April 6th and beyond, with no end date. And so the first priority, we sat down as a staff that Sunday afternoon and broke into different work groups. And the group that came back with the feeding sites came up with 6 kitchens and 3 remote sites to try to serve our county. And the first week we did not serve on Monday, and the second day on Tuesday was our first day of feeding, was our smallest feeding date yet. But that first week we served 14,382 meals. The second week, 20,285. The third week, 20,634. The fourth week was 23,656. And as the time of the packet, we didn't have last week's in there. I've sent that to you. I don't have it in front of me today. But as of the first 4 weeks, we served 78,957 meals, and we're just shy of 100,000 right now, probably past 100,000 today, or very close to it. So the good news of that is the cafeteria workers have been amazing workers through this. That is preparing, bagging, carrying it out to the road, practicing the social distancing guidelines of finding out from somebody before they get out of the car how many meals they need. We put them on a table, then back away from the table. Somebody comes up and gets them then. And so it's just been amazing work, and they've done this in days that are colder than others, days that are hotter than others, some days with rain, but they have been absolute troopers with that. And so that was the good news, that we just wanted to report their progress and commend them for a job well done. The second priority that he gave was for childcare and providing childcare in the county, and we have partnered with the YMCA to do that. And the YMCA is, since the Y is closed right now for fitness and their classes and all of that, they are currently using their employees to watch children. The partnership with us is we are providing their meals, while they have the students in their care. And so they are coming over to Poplar Springs, and we're bagging up food for them, and they are keeping them. So in that partnership together, we are taking care of that responsibility as well. So the good news there is to thank the Y for their partnership and working with them, as well as I know that there are several local churches that have also done a lot of different things, whether that's offering free daycare and stuff. But the Y has been an official partner of ours for a while, and they have stepped up in this time as well. The third priority we will get to in the agenda for the remote learning, distance learning, but we did want to just say thank you to our child nutrition staff and to the Y for helping us with those priorities from the governor.
Okay, great. Any other good news that y'all can think of that we need to discuss? Okay, thanks. Moving on to public comments. Mr. Johnson, have we had anybody submit for public comments?
Not to my knowledge, but I'll ask Mrs. Bojack if she's had any contact.
And Mrs. Bojack is here in the boardroom, and we do not have anyone in the boardroom tonight, and no one has submitted any correspondence for public comments this evening.
Okay, with that being said, Fred, do I still need to read the whole thing, or can we just roll through it?
We can omit that.
Okay. All right, moving on to the consent agenda. Approval of work session minutes of March 2nd, and approval of electronic regular session minutes from the 19th. This time I'll turn it over to Ms. Messick. Do you have any comments?
No comments at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Knight?
No, sir. No comments. Thank you.
Ms. Tedder?
No, sir.
All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
So moved. Discussion agenda. Discussion of draft 2021 capital outlay project.
And Mr. Goins is going to go over that this evening.
Yes, board members, in your packet, you should have the superintendent's capital outlay budget request. We met, we had a virtual meeting. We discussed all the items on the budget and felt like this were our top items. You have the list of what everybody submitted as well, if you want to look over those. And then the third thing, you also have the project that was going to be completed from the 2019 capital outlay. All those projects on that list have been completed with the exception of replacing the 55 desks at Piney Grove Middle School. And I have a quote on that. I just hadn't had a chance to meet with Ms. Pendleton to see if that's the type she's wanting, but everything else has been completed. Do you have any questions about any of the projects that the schools asked for?
Ms. Knight, you want to go first?
How long has Nancy Reynolds' gym had an issue? Ricky?
Well, we've been patching that roof it was on our list of roof projects, and we felt like it's time for it to be replaced. Out of the three roofs, our top two are Nancy Reynolds and Lawsonville are our top two roofs, and then North Stokes would be our third roof.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Messick.
Are we on the all of those items that the principals have turned in? Is that the one we're looking at now?
Look, looking at the capital outlay request, really just the first page of A that totals $2,124,000.
That's the superintendent's request. That's our top picks out of all of them. Then the next one, you should have all the capital projects that they requested.
Yes,
Right.
I do. I see that.
2.9 million.
I wanted to ask you, Ricky, the endowment that Nancy Reynolds has, it doesn't cover anything on the outside of the buildings.
The way that endowment is set up, they typically go to grounds first. And that's when they keep their ball fields and stuff like that up. But what the endowment committee has always said, if it's something we supply to other schools, such as roofs and things like that, they felt like we should supply it to Nancy Reynolds as well.
But in theory, the endowment could pay for that. Is that right?
The roof,
Yes.
that'd be a Miss Moore question.
I'll just say this, the committee that's there at Nancy Reynolds, they have not agreed to allow us to spend for monies, just like Ricky said, for items. But to answer your question on that, Pat, Mr. Johnson might have to go ahead and answer that if he knows. We would probably have to research that to see, but I can say I don't think the committee would ever agree to that based on past experience.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Massick?
No, that's all for right now.
All right, Ms. Tedder, you want to ask any questions?
Regarding item number 13, the track, I just recall from a conversation with, it was at least Miss Cheek, and I'm not sure if you were there, Mr. Rogers, or not, but when we discussed their track, the concern was with the pine trees behind the visitors' side, that if we didn't take care of that issue with the falling pine needles and the sap and all that, that it wouldn't be very fiscally responsible to spend the money to replace the track until that was taken care of. So can you address that, Ricky?
Yes, ma'am. That is correct. When Richie and we met with two different track contractors last year, and both contractors told us the same thing, that the pine needles was the worst thing could be on the rubberized track. The acid in the pine needles just deteriorated the rubber. So to really do one, you need to do both. You need to take the pine trees down and replace the track at the same time.
And Ricky, that budget number of 600,000 incorporates taking down the trees, the fencing, replacing the fencing, and replacing the track, correct?
That is correct. As far as the track price, we supposed to have the bid opening on April the 29th for the West Stokes track. So that would give us a little harder number on the track cost. On this budget number here, I estimated the track at being at $500,000 and $100,000 to remove the trees and put a new fence up.
Okay. Thank you on that one. And then item number 10, what do you mean that the South Stokes gym floor is a safety issue?
What we have there now, one board is broken up as you come in the gym. They've got something sitting by it. That can be repaired, but when you start looking over the whole floor, where the wood joints meet on the end, we're thinking where it's sanded down, where it's been sanded several times and gotten so thin, several boards have broken on the end, and you can walk by and feel weak spots on the end. I mean, they're subject to break any time. That's why we called it a safety issue.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
There is a gap under that floor. I don't want to use the wrong term, Ricky, but it's a suspended floor. So there's several inches of open space under that floor. And when these boards are breaking, if it were to go through, if a person were walking on it when that board gave way, their foot would drop several inches through the floor.
That's correct. It's probably 1.5 to 2 inch gap underneath that floor. It sets on runners. So you do have space underneath it.
Okay, understand that. And then a question on number 7. The chiller there at West Stokes, will this hopefully solve the inconsistent temperature throughout the building?
It will help with that. Part of the problem, we've been monitoring it, and that should say chillers. I apologize for that, because that would be replacing both chillers at that school. We've had trained to come up and look at it to try to fix it, but they just inconsistently will just trip out. So when the chillers are running, we have a service technician go by there every morning to check to see if the chillers have to be reset. And 3 to 4 times a week, they have to be reset every morning.
Understand that. But you think it could help the problem where it be 90 some degrees on one hall and 60 degrees over there in the media center, or who knows what it's going to be from day to day.
This will help. This will help with the cooling over the whole school, but that sounds more like a control issue, because you could have an issue going on with one air handler versus another air handler to be that inconsistent. But this will help the whole school.
Is that what you just described, that problem? Is that a Johnson Controls issue, or?
It could be a Johnson Control, or it could be a mechanical issue. Because when you have at West Stokes, you have one huge air handler that controls a whole wing. So if that air handler goes out, I mean, it's affecting several classrooms. You could have one working fine and the other one not putting out any cool air, and it'd be 90 some degrees in that wing. But it'd be a mechanical issue as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, Ms. Tatter?
I'm good.
All right. I'm going to say this. In the event, I mean, that's $2.124 million we would request. If we go back to the older days where the funding was only $300,000 to $500,000, what makes the list? What are the gotta haves and what are the need to haves and what are the wish I hads? I guess is the question. Because I have a feeling in talking to our county commissioners with COVID-19 and the severe lack of funding, everybody's having to cut. So what are our projects? I understand the chillers. If we don't do something with the chillers, we can't operate a school. So what in this list is, if we don't have it, we have to shut a school down. Potentials, Ricky or Dr. Rice.
Well, if you're looking at it from a mechanical standpoint, that you got the chillers at West, the boiler at South Stokes. The boiler at South's a 1978 model that's leaking, but that's just in one building. That's the Auto Tech building. And then you got the burner at Piney Grove. That affects the whole school.
Okay. So as far as not being able to open the doors, those are the potential projects. The chiller, boiler, and burner. Can the roofs make it one more year if we're forced to?
If we have to, Lawsonville needs a roof. I mean, it's one of our. If I had to rank them, that would be number 1 this year. Then Nancy Reynolds number 2, and North I know can wait another year if we had to. But Nancy Reynolds. Do what, sir?
What about Lawsonville?
Lawsonville is our worst roof this year. It really needs a roof on it.
Okay.
But we patch it every time they send it in. We'll go up and put a patch on it.
Yeah. I'm familiar with what our roofs look like. I've seen quilts that had fewer patches on them. Okay. I'm just
the fire alarm at London. It's currently working. There's no parts available for that fire alarm anymore. The company that works on it said they may have a board that may or may not work, that they took off, that they replaced the fire alarm panel. But right now it is working, but there's no parts available.
Okay.
And Mr. Rogers, we tried to look through this list, and that's kind of how we did our priority orders in looking at, can you have school or not, versus, and that's why the athletic stuff about the gym floor and the track are down toward the bottom of the list. They may be in worse shape, but again, you can do road track meets. I mean, obviously we've done that at West Stokes.
Right.
And so that's why the athletic type things are moved down. But the South Stokes gym floor is used for PE classes. It's used for ROTC. And for, multiple athletic events inside, versus a track that's basically used for one sport in one season. So we've tried to take into account usage and operation ability when we prioritize this list.
Okay. I mean, I'm not faulting the list. I'm just, I'm being whispered to that it's going to be a very bleak year for the county budget. And I understand that. I'm just trying to see, is there anything that could slide if we have to, or to make sure our priorities are keeping the doors open and our kids safe. Okay.
And with talking with our team, Dr. Taylor, Ms. Moore, Mr. Goins, our suggestion would, this was a recommended budget to you. Again, you could, if you wanted to pull some things off and put other items on there for the budget to go up the hill, is fine. And then when they give us the number, we'll have to reprioritize again.
Right. Yeah, I'm just trying to find out what the minimum number actually, what we got to have number is, what we need to have is, and what we wish we had is.
I would say down through number 9 is pretty much we've got to have to operate school in these buildings. And we could say, let's go another year with the chillers and restart them every morning. And if they're still restarting in June of 2021, that's wonderful. But if it stops, that's 800 or 900 kids that for 5 months a year is pretty miserable and pretty much unable to have school.
Oh, I agree. I mean, the West Oaks chillers are a major thing because that's our biggest high school. And when the one day they don't start, we're done. So just trying to make sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Now you said through number 9, but the gym floor, you're saying that is a educational aspect though at number 10.
It is, and there is a potential of doing some patchwork that at a cheaper cost that would get another year or 2 out of it. But then you would have to replace the whole floor, and then you would have spent, $160,000 in 3 years versus spending $125,000 this year and having a 25 year floor in. So there is another option there depending on what we get back.
Okay. Ricky, can you find out for me just roughly what it would cost to patch the floor in the event we had to?
That cost is anywhere between $20,000 and $40,000, depending on what we want to do.
Okay.
I've already got that cost.
All right, 20 to 40, and then we're still going to pay 125. Okay.
Yeah, later. Correct.
Yeah, I'm going back. I've got to be able to justify, just like we did the roof at South with the mold. If it's cost us $80 to get rid of the mold and only $300 for the roof, I don't want to lose $80,000.
Correct.
All right. Okay.
And if we're talking about the chillers at West Stokes, the lead time on that equipment could be anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks. If you ordered it today, it could be from 8 to. They said up to 8 to 10 weeks because they manufacture those once they ordered. They're not sitting on the shelf.
I understand. Well, Train may get better. They just got spun off. So.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Discussion of the Fire Academy.
We got current expense first, and that's Ms. Moore.
Okay, for your current expense budget, you have your cover sheet. So if you will flip over then to your next page, and across the top of it, it talks about the superintendent's budget summary. There you will see what the request for the 2021 current expense budget, the 14 million, $682,203. And then you can also under there see a comparison of 1920 budget to the 2021 in the amount of increase or decrease. Basically, it's an increase of what the county funding would look like there. Overall, it would be $1,199,900 as it's submitted right now to you all. I tried to summarize just by the different categories, the increases or decreases. Overall, for example, if you will look under there, your salaries and benefits, the increase is $102,297. The technology is a decrease of $4,800. You can go on down. Some areas have no increase or decrease at all, no change. But you can go down and see the different line items as summary of what the actual changes are. And that continues on your next page as well. And you can see that our increases is $578,455 to maintain our same programs, basically. Then we have new requests, and these are not listed in priority order. And the new request is $621,445. That's what makes up your $1,199,000. Now, for detail on those special requests, as you go into the budget with, which are page numbers there for you to look at, but I've highlighted those new requests in blue. And as you go on over in the budget, they start on page 5. So that gives you more of a detail of what all is involved in making the new request. So your pages 1 through 16 actually provide you the detail that you're used to seeing. It shows your approved amount for 1920, the request for 2021, and the amount of increase or decrease. And then again, that's these individual sheets here come back to that summary sheet for you to see what makes up the different categories. Do you have questions? Do I need to go into further detail? I think it's a matter of going through and looking at it, and you all are letting us know if you do have questions.
Okay, we'll start with Ms. Knight. Ms. Knight, are you with us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm trying to get the button to unmute. But the maintenance position, how would that be utilized, or system-wide, or more at a certain, where's the need there, Mr. Goins? Or
Mr. Goins, would you like to address that?
Yes. What that position would be, it would be advertised as a carpenter 1, but the position would actually be a locksmith apprentice. The state doesn't have that position, but our locksmith is 67-year-old, and he may retire in the next couple, 3 years. And this is a position that takes several years to learn. Plus, I think we still have schools that have never been rekeyed with that extra position, having 2 locksmiths on staff. I want to go through it and rekey all of our schools to have better security.
okay.
All right, Ms. Method, do you have any questions?
I just wanted to ask, where would the Thames data manager be placed?
That would be a position. We have one person, Ms. Inman, who does TIMS for our district. And so we would like to have a person as a helper to her and a backup for her in case she were to go out on an extended leave or something. TIMS does all of the bus routing for us and student assignment on the buses. And they would also be assigned to be a backup data manager at the early college. We have kind of worked into a data center there with some offices where we're doing more regionalized data management instead of at the schools, especially for some of our smaller schools. So that position would be housed at the early college under Ms. Slager in her department, working with transportation and data management.
Would they be able to do both jobs? It seems like,
Well, just trying to be cognizant of the budget. Yes, ideally, we'd love to have 2 full-time people, 1 devoted to each, but understanding budget and all of that, 1 person to be a backup for both is better than not having a backup for either. Again, Miss Inman, when you have 1 person doing a job, anything happens where any type of extended leave, we're in trouble because that system is not an easy system to operate. Somebody off the street can't just do it. You have to have training. Most of the time it's around 4 to 6 days of training in Charlotte or Raleigh to be able to use that system. The same thing with our data manager positions. Again, when we have people that are handling 3 and 4 schools, if they were to go out, it really puts a strain on the rest of our departments. So we're looking at 1 person being trained in both to be able to help out as needed. And there's already, these people are overworked. So this person would relieve a workload and be there in case of an emergency as well.
okay, thank you.
Just for a little perspective, and when I was in Asheboro, we had 1.5 TIMS operators for about 4,800 students. So we've got, over 1,000 more students, and we only have 1 person here.
Okay. Ms. Tedder?
Probably for Lynette. The salaries, when my first question was number 7, salary adjustment. Can you explain that one, salary adjustment for classified employees based on years of experience?
What that is, it used to be that we had steps, and each year when a person completed as many as 6 months in that year, they would go up a step, and then the state done away with those steps. So they no longer maintain a scale that way, but we have a scale in Stokes County, and basically it ranges from like 1 to 1.5% from like A, B, C, D steps. Our employees have not been allowed to be moved up on steps, basically because it's just a financial issue. We've not been able to do that. So we looked at the fact of how much it would cost to begin doing that. And moving them up on the scale, that's where they really need to be based on their actual years of service. And, this is something we can look at. Dr. Rice said if it's something we couldn't afford for all, we might can start doing something each year to eventually get, all the classified employees covered that way. But that's basically the intent of this request in number 7. And to let you know, for clerical, for example, which would include any clerical in this office and the schools, that would be your $33,597. And then the custodians, you go on down, it just shows you the cost by category. And then again, I have included what it would be if we made the adjustment to include the 4% supplement. And with that, I will say this budget does include the supplement of maintaining the 4% on whatever the current salaries might be for next year.
Can you address about bus drivers, number 19 there, bus drivers? Are you talking about them sort of like you're talking about the clerical staff? And then what about cafeteria staff?
Okay, your cafeteria staff would not be in this budget. It would be part of your child nutrition funding. So that's why you would not see those particular employees here. Now, for me to follow you, you're on, where are you at on the bus? I've got to. Page 3, okay.
Did that include what you just talked about? Does that include an increase for the bus drivers?
Our bus drivers are basically on scale for their years. Number 19 that you're looking at on page 3, that small amount is the state has a minimum and a maximum scale. And they will not pay for any driver that exceeds the max. And we do have a few drivers that exceed the max. So therefore, we have to pick that up on local dollars. It's not a whole lot, as you can see, but that's the reason that you actually see that figure there.
Okay. Melissa, has there been any consideration rather than just about years of service when you're talking about increases as to equity in regards to size of school?
Mrs. Tedder, this is Miss Jessup speaking. Currently, we factor in the college or the level of education. For example, if they have an associate's degree or a bachelor's or a master's degree, that moves an individual up on the salary schedule between the minimum and the maximum. That basically our clerical determination on salary placement does look at the ADM at a school, for example, for financial secretaries, based upon the size of the school, that does determine the classification or the grade that they are placed on. So as we look at in the future, if this stays in the budget, in looking at these different classifications, as we look at, for example, office support, then we would want to revisit that current scale where we determine placement based on ADM. So that's a long answer, but to answer your question, we do factor that in.
Okay, Ms. Tedder, with this adjustment here, people are already classified, as Melissa said, on the right scale already based on the size of the school and whether on their degree. So we're not looking at reclassifications with this figure. It's only, we're saying they're already classified in the area they need to be, but what this would do would give them the increase based on every year, for example, that they've given Stokes County schools.
Agree. I mean, understood and agree with that, and I appreciate that that's in there. Thank you very much for that. I did want to talk about the additional positions requested on this list, please, for just a minute. And pretty much what was expected, I agree with those 7 or those 6 new positions. Well, I shouldn't say completely agree with those. One I have an issue with, sort of. I love that the first responder firefighter position is in there. The TIMS data manager, that was definitely needed last year when the request came to us, and full-heartedly agree with that. And I understand the request for an apprentice to David, because he's going to be definitely, those are big shoes to fill when he decides to retire. I don't know if it needs to be a full-time position necessarily, but given what we have gone through in the last couple of months, and back to my whole concern about the whole child wellness and educating the whole child, we have no clue what these kids are going to come back from when we do get back to school, and the effects of what we're going through right now could not exhibit for a while. And I know our guidance counselors are working with some students who are going through some difficult times with this isolation and whatnot. I'm going to also request that we put in here the 3.5 positions to make us whole with guidance counselors at our school. I would like some figures in there, and just put that on here and send it to the county and see what they think. But I would be remiss if I didn't speak out for that and request that we put that in here as well.
All right, we've made that note here. Just to kind of tell you what our thoughts were is to present these budgets to you tonight, let you be able to look through them. When we come back on the work session, we will need to finalize that. Our budgets, your budget is due to the county commissioners the 15th of May. And so we will need to finalize that either at the next meeting at the beginning of May, I believe that is May 4th, or we would need to have subsequent meetings after that if we were not able to finalize one on the 4th. So we've made a note of that. Ms. Moore will find those numbers and have those ready for us as we get ready to discuss that more on the 4th.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Mr. Rogers, I don't know if you were wanting to speak any more on the expense agenda, but I did want to go back to the capital real quick when it's appropriate.
Yeah, do it now because we're rolling through it. I mean, I'm good with the expense, Ms. Moore. I appreciate yours and the whole team effort. Fine times. There's nothing unsaid about that. We all know we're in uncharted waters, so I appreciate everybody's effort so far. Ms. Tedder, you want to go back to capital? You had a question?
Yeah, just that second page, the 2021 requested projects to be completed from the 1920 capital. Ricky, this I assume is the additional monies left over from that roof project, and some of these we did already approve, like the equipment. Those are the equipment pieces we approved, correct?
That's correct.
And the new roof press box, we had already approved that one, right?
Correct.
Okay, I just didn't remember a couple of these, like the King Elementary exterior lighting and the London. And then I thought Piney Grove was science tables and chairs, not desks. But
well, King requested lighting in their capital budget, and we was able to do that in-house, and for like $1,650. We put up new wall packs around the school and had Duke Power to put up some LED lighting, couple in one of his parking lots, and he was satisfied with that.
Okay, great.
The catch basin for London, that was put in there. That resulted in, after we put the additional drainage in from the steam pipe that was approved last year, what we did on that, we just charged that back to that project. And we went just a little bit over, but I talked with Miss Moore about that, and we were fine with that. So that was a project that we've done this year. That was just over $6,700 to do that one. And also, like if you look down at the Stokes Early College High School, they requested additional lighting at the picnic shelter. What we did there, we only have about 3 hours. I'm guessing 2 to 3 hours labor for 2 men. I talked with the county. They actually purchased the light since that's a county building, and they were going to have to pay a contractor to put the lights up. So I agreed to send our electricians up and put the lights up. So it's kind of a group effort on that one.
Okay, wonderful. I just wanted some clarification on that. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else, Ms. Tedder?
No, I'm good on that. Thank you.
All right, good deal. All right, let's get back to for some reason, the presentation, I'm not seeing in the agenda anymore. So I'm assuming the next thing is discussion of the fire academy.
Yes, sir, Mr. Rogers. This is Doug Rose. I just want to give you all an update on the meeting and discussion that was had. On March 11th, Dr. David Barber with CTE, who oversees the academies, came and met with us for our required meeting in order to start this. At that meeting, we had Tom May from South Stokes Fire Department, Scott Aaron, Will Carter, principals, myself, and Miss Kate, and we went through the manual with fine-tooth comb with Dr. Barber, and he recognized the commitment from our local firefighters and the commitment from our school to make this a success, and he did approve us to move forward with a fire academy. I included a link in your paperwork to the manual that outlines everything that's required with the program. The prop shop construction, we would be wanting to make 2 of those. Jeff Robertson with West Oaks High School has already gotten the lumber donated for 1 of those, and we're working on purchasing the other. When we return to school, our carpentry programs will be able to build those. We will have to build we will have to create a memorandum of understanding to share with these local agencies that we're going to be working with our local fire departments, because they are going to be the utmost support to this program being successful. And then the biggie will be finding a qualified instructor. I have had someone to reach out to me. I just have to go to the regional person and check qualifications once we start that interview process. Also, within this information, I included a possible schedule for our school board. And in looking at this, you'll see that I had listed the start date for spring 2021. And again, all of this can be adjusted, but this was just a way to phase in the classes. I think it would help with the enrollment numbers each time that you offer the classes, and it would run over a multi-year period to build up to your concentrators, which is where the students would be taking the work keys, and they would have the sequential courses in a level 1 and level 2 to meet that concentration. And then they would be able to move into firefighter 3, which would make them a pathway major. This has a large number of credentialing that runs with it. That was one of the reasons that we included Ms. Kate in the meeting. But at any rate, I just want to let you know that the meeting was successful. I think we have a good plan in place, and I would entertain any feedback on the course sequencing or information that you all would like to share.
Okay, Ms. Knight, do you have anything?
Doug, is this schedule just designed so that, of course, the teacher would, it'd be 1 instructor and they could move from either the South and West Stokes students in the spring and North in the fall, or would
Yes,
they
ma'am.
around like more
So
quickly?
with the, we wanted to make, if we're going to implement a new program, our hope is always to implement and benefit all the students of Stokes County. By doing this route, we can have the students from West traveling as they do with ROTC, and we'll be able to supply this pathway to all the students in Stokes County. And again, it sort of builds these courses in over time. But yes, the goal of it was to implement it for the whole county. And with this, the first semester is the only one where the instructor would have to travel. The way I've got this written up, when you look, you see that for fall 2021, they would be full-time at one school. For spring of 2022, they would be full-time at another school. So that does prevent them from having to drive, maximizes their planning time, and cuts down on travel expenses.
And will there be some additional courses that students would have to take upon themselves to take, like in the summer when they're not in school, to go towards completing the program?
If we were, once they get to firefighter 2, they're a concentrator. They already have credentialing. At firefighter 3, they have the full credentials. I believe there was one other module that they would have to do afterwards, but I will have to double check that. I believe in all the credentialing that was there was one credential maybe that they had to be 18 for or had to be offered at another site, but I will double check that for you.
Okay, but hopefully with a good partnership, you know, with local departments and or some of the teachers maybe that come to the local departments through Forsyth Tech, that could easily be obtained.
I would hope so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Messick, do you have anything?
Yes, I did want to ask, Mr. Rose, if they start in the spring of, 2021 and you were then a sophomore, would you be able to get the firefighter 3 by the time you were a senior? Or would you have to be a freshman to start this?
You would have to be a freshman. Now, from that point, though, you know, everyone following would be able to. But like the current sophomores under this plan would only get the 3 classes. So it'd be public safety, firefighter 1, and firefighter 2.
So they wouldn't get the firefighter 3, the pathway major at all.
Correct.
How would they get that after they graduate? They'd have to, how does that work when you just get firefighter 2?
Well, if they wish to add the other credentials, there is a workforce continuing education pathway that runs through, I believe, Forsyth or Surrey one. The program that we have currently is more of a degree program with Forsyth Tech at the center over next to West. So I don't know that they have the firefighter credentials built in on that one. But I am talking to Alan Murdoch about that as well.
So the person would have to know as a freshman to be able to move through all this. Is that right?
Yes.
Well, I'm really glad that we're doing this. I think it'll make a big impression on a lot of students that they could come out if they started as a freshman as a firefighter. I do like the fact that that you made it available to all the students in the county, south, west, and north Stokes. So I think that we've done well to get this program. Thank you for all your hard work.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Also, with everything that Mr. Rogers was saying in regards to our local budget and the appearance that with this COVID-19, it may be limited, it'd probably be very helpful to look at 5 months of employment rather than 10 for the next school year. Also, the classes are more likely to fill up with just having the 3 to fill. And then in the 21-20 school year, we would have the additional classes to fill up then.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Anything else, Ms. Messick?
No, that's all for right now.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tedder?
I echo the comments from Ms. Messick there, Doug. Thank you so much. I'm very, very excited that this is going to be offered to the 3 traditional high schools. Didn't know that would be a possibility and very excited about that. Would it be first period for at South and West then again?
So there would be one full semester where the instructor was at South, and we would have to travel like we do with ROTC for West. So
just
West
for first period?
South.
And it would just be first period?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and then I'm just a little bit confused when you get to the fall of 2023, where you would remove public safety. So are we sort of hoping that this builds participation, and maybe we could get a second instructor later on, so then we could start this program over for the incoming?
So with Public Safety 1, that is just a public safety class that Dr. Barber recommended as an introduction to build interest, that can build into several different pathways with law enforcement, firefighting, EMS. He had recommended that as a starter course. It is not a prerequisite. So this would get our program running and underway, and then we could phase that course out and phase in the pathway major. Once we have the program up and running strong, then we could just stick strictly with firefighter. Because right now, my big fear, when you talk about adding an additional instructor, each year our months of employment have continued to decrease. I did receive our months of employment allotment for next year, and we're down 2 months. We've gone from 314 to 312. So hopefully we're going to start increasing numbers and see those months of employment increasing. But since I've been in this position, that has not been the case. So when I was sort of building the schedule, I was just looking at the way to impact the most students and supply it as equitably as possible to our students.
Okay, that's very understandable. I appreciate that. Maybe this could be the start of something, with some offshoots down the road, if we would ever get in a financial situation where we could build on the public safety and do other than just firefighting, law enforcement, broaden that. But I think this is a wonderful, wonderful start with this program. So thank you very much for all your work on that.
Thank you. I'm very hopeful too. I keep hoping that when that 013 budget comes out, one of these years I'm going to see it increase.
We can only hope.
That's right.
Okay, then I guess it's on to me. Ms. Tedder, well, let me ask, did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No, I'm good with that. Thank you.
Again, Doug, you've done a great job since you and I had the initial meeting, and I worried the snot out of you trying to get you to push for this. It's great to see it finally coming to fruition. Let's just hope we can get the funding from the county commissioners. I know it's going to be bleak, but where there's a will, we need to find a way. So we'll go from there.
Well, and I know we had a full-time instructor listed. I think by going with the spring semester to kick it off, it'll give some time for the excitement to build around the program. It allows us time to, look through and find that instructor, and it can save some funding. So maybe we can get on some more sure footing before we jump whole hog.
Okay. All right, great. All right, moving on. Can we advance the Google sheet to page 2 of the agenda? And then we'll talk about discussion of accreditation.
All right. Under the accreditation, I know that you all are aware, it's been a long time since we have gone through the accreditation process. In fact, the last time that happened and went through accreditation was 14-15, and it was with Advanced Ed. This is an extremely expensive process, and we don't just pay for the 1 year of the process. When they come to do the accreditation, we pay a fee each year. Advanced Ed has changed names to Cognia. I talked to Dr. Melton, who works our area with Cognia, and she was telling about some of the side benefits that run along with doing the accreditation with them. And they have extended the guidelines for when we can choose to do this. If we go through in the next 2 years, we go through the old system of accreditation. If we were to wait and go through in year 3 or 4, then we would go through a new set of standards and a new process that they are currently building. In North Carolina, you're probably aware we're not required to have accredited schools. I do know of only one district that chose not to have any of their schools accredited. Several districts have chosen just to do their high schools. And then some schools around us are now choosing to go with the NCDPI high school accreditation process. I threw some figures in there for you as far as the cost with Cognia each year. These were numbers that I had collected in the past. This past year, if I'm not mistaken, I believe it was $24,000 to be labeled accredited by Cognia. The DPI accreditation is good for 5 years. It is $1,840 per school. So if we were to do all 5 high schools there, you can see what the total is. And you can see what would happen if we only did 4. Then I tried to give you a description of the process with what I'm aware of with Cognia. And then I can tell you that with the NCDPI system, they look at our current data, and it's more of a desk audit. They're going to look at some of the measures that really matter to us with our school performance grades, student growth, graduates passing Math 3, ACT work keys, graduation rate, dropout rate. And I want to let you know, as I was talking to Dr. Melton, she was describing some of the services that Cognia offers to our district with surveys and school improvement strategies, and then some of their assessments and digital professional development that they offered. When I go into our Power School system and NC Star has a ton of school improvement strategies and indicators that we are assessing throughout the year. We have our professional development within the NESIS system. And then I know our board has chosen to go with Qualtrics, but often I will use just Google Forms to collect information from our staffs and, things like our teacher working condition survey that we have as well. So we are not required to make a decision at this time. If we did not say what we wanted to do in the future, Cognia would send us a bill next fall or at some point for the next school year's accreditation. I would be very interested in going with DPI's high school accreditation process, considering that we have many of the resources that Cognia provides, just in a different format that our state has created. And looking at that, their accreditation is valid for 5 years as well. And board members, I did share some links with you there for additional information on this process. Do you have any questions?
Ms. Knight?
Doug, are there any significant changes in like the way the schools are graded, or any major changes there compared to the past?
No, we're continuing with our 15-point scale, using really the same measures that we have been using. Our measures in CTE are changing, but that doesn't calculate into your school grade. Outside of work keys can help your school grade.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Messick?
When we had what is now Cognia, but used to be Advanced Ed, I was still on the board when we did that. And we got a good grade from that, didn't we, Mr. Rose?
We did.
And our school systems did a good job in presenting the facts, and so I was really proud of that we were able to make such a high score with advanced ed. I thought at one time you had said that if we went on right away with Cognia or advanced ed, that it would be a cheaper route to go than to wait until they formed a whole new process. But in the packet here, it says it would be $16,000. Is that correct?
That, I'm looking here. So that was on the year that we went through.
Right.
Ms. Messick, this is where the cost savings really does come in. My understanding is if we go with the DPI accreditation, we pay $18.40 for high school for the desk audit, and we're accredited for 5 years.
With DPI?
Yes, ma'am. With Cognia, it is a yearly fee.
And that's a private organization, isn't it?
They
Is it a private business?
They accredit really internationally. I mean, when you look, I think it's a fee to sort of be on their website. And I hate to word things that way, but when I'm looking at the resources that are there, we have a lot of those resources built digitally in with DPI. Their fees have gone up too. It's not a set point. So for example, this last year, that fee that we mentioned from 14-15, this year went to 24,000.
I see that. And we work with DPI all the time. And I do understand that a lot of school systems have changed to just doing the high schools.
Yes, ma'am.
Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
Do they do the early colleges also?
Yes. And I would want to keep the early college with that as well.
I would too. Well, I certainly could consider DPI because, you know, we work with them on a daily basis, don't we?
We do. And I've talked with Mr. Duggins out of Yadkin. I know this is the route that they are planning to go. And East Surrey has already been through the process. In fact, they're listed on the DPI website for this. So I was hoping to reach out to a couple of folks there and see how that went and just get some more information. But it is spreading. Before, it seemed like there were several schools that went through it in 2016, and they were the only ones listed on the DPI site. But I'm starting to see more local folks going that way. And I just, I want to talk with them about the quality of the process, but I want to make the board aware of the possible cost savings and the fact that I think we have all of those resources through our local and through our state resources that we have with DPI.
Right. Well, this has been a lot of work for you, and I appreciate you assembling all this information, and it'll be something we can study until the next board meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Tanner.
Dr. Rice, I remember when we talked about this last year, this process, I think you said that when you were doing college visits with Carrie, that you asked those schools something about, did you know that we were accredited or not, or something like that? And do you recall talking about that?
Yes, ma'am. I will say that and now I've had a second daughter go through these visits, that when I've asked, does it matter who accredits or what, the colleges have basically acted like they didn't really even know what I was talking about. So I said, if there are two kids and one's been at a school or three kids and one's been at a school that's been accredited by DPI, one that's been accredited by advanced ed, or one that's not accredited, does that matter? And the answer I've been given at the places I've been is no, that does not matter.
Okay, that's what I
One
thought. I recalled.
accreditation doesn't give a kid an advantage over another.
Okay, that's what I thought I recalled you saying. And so that just leads me back to, I think, the question I had before. I mean, why do we even go through this necessarily, especially now when education, what data is going to be reflected in this new cycle? Because if it's current or data that we're doing right now, or grades or graduation rate, dropout rate, who knows what that's going to look like this year? I mean, if we can even count any of that. So I'm just wondering, do we even go through it at all? Is my thought at this point.
Well, and just thinking out loud, excuse me for that, but I wonder if we could not cancel Cognia and tell them we were not going to go through with that and not pay the fee for next year. These are all things I would have to investigate a little further. And then as we finish the 2021 school year, possibly we could look then. I would hate to have a lapse in accreditation, even though I know some schools may choose not to do that, but I guess that could be an option.
And I do think that it's an option. I was just, in discussing it, looking at going from a full-blown district accreditation to possibly having a step-down approach. And the same way when we first discussed this a couple of years ago about a DPI accreditation, there were very few schools that had gone through that. And so now that more schools have gone through that, that's become a more accepted thing. Maybe in a few years, if we go through this, in the 2021 school year through DPI, that when we get to that 25-26 school year, we decide that, we don't really need that. The school report cards are enough to say that our schools are good and quality education. It may be a step down approach.
Okay, that those sound like good options to consider. Thank you.
Okay, then I guess it's on to me. I'm all for going with the DPI. I mean, it's time to pull the Band-Aid off. If we're paying somebody an exorbitant amount to say, yeah, your kids are smart. All we need is the accreditation factor. I've never heard of a college actually asking, was my elementary school student accredited? It's just not, I've never heard of that. So I've never been into that. I've had two go through college, so we'll just have to go from there. But I'm all for going in the step down approach just because it's not such a dramatic change. We're not pulling the Band-Aid off, just ripping it off and saying, hey, we think we're good enough. I'm all for the DPI. It's going to save us some money and leave us a path forward. I'm also not for paying anybody money this year that we don't really necessarily need. So if y'all are recommending going with DPI, I am fine with that.
All right. Thank you.
Okay.
Sounds great.
Do we want to move that to an action item or possibly have that on consent for the next meeting?
Let's move to action item B because we only have one other action item. But the main thing is we know our kids are great. They're still going to be accredited, and we're going to save the county a bunch of money. And then this time, now we need it.
All right.
So, well, I'll need to take a vote real quick. Do I have a motion to move it to action item B?
I make a motion to move it. Are you saying make a motion so that we can move it to DPI and not pay for this year? Is that what it is? Or
Look, however you make the motion, Ms. Messick, if you want to say you make the motion that we go with DPI accreditation for our high schools and no longer go with Cognitive, that's however you want to word it.
But that is what you were meaning, right?
That's what I'm suggesting.
Well, I would certainly hate to have a lapse in accreditation, because even when they first started accredited schools, you know, our system has always been accredited. And so I see DPI as a good thing myself. So I make that motion that we go with DPI, and that,
We're just making the motion to move it to action right
all
now.
right, I make a motion to move it to action. Sorry.
Another second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Ms. Messick. All right, so it will be action on item B. All right, COVID-19 and the lovely update.
All right, board members. I really wanted to just make sure that you all were informed about some of the grading changes that have taken place, because several of them are not necessarily in line with state board policy. And I outlined some of those for you below. When we got our main communication from DPI in regards to grading and moving to this digital platform, they outlined the critical areas that had to be met through this platform. And I listed those 5 components for you at the top. And then I just kind of broke it down into what guidance we had received for grading at our grade levels. With K5 supporting progress and communicating feedback. 6 through 11 is still really kind of up in the air with what we have received. I know that you all are probably getting a ton of questions on grading. What is that going to look like? Are we going to do this just like the seniors? We're hearing all those questions as well, but I really want to wait and hear from the state on what their recommendation is. Probably the one you're hearing the most about are our seniors for this year. And the guidance that we received from them was that we were to focus on their progress as of March 13th. We would continue instruction and continue student growth. The transcripts, they would be held harmless with either PC-19 for pass or WC-19 for withdrawal, based on the progress that they were making. If we had a senior who was not passing as of March 13th, the guidance that we received were to help them to complete those assignments and meet promotion standards so that this crisis doesn't negatively impact their future. The fall courses that we took are going to calculate into all GPAs. For our seniors and seniors only right now, spring classes will receive the PC-19 or WC-19 designation, and that will not average into student GPAs for our seniors. Now, the next section that I have outlined for you here are the ones that sort of defy some state board policy, but I want to make you aware of that in case you were questioned. Our OCS seniors normally complete 225 work hours. This year's seniors are only required to meet 157 hours. I talked to our principals. All of our OCS seniors have met this requirement already. The Future Ready core requirement for CPR has been waived for this year's seniors. And then we typically require 28 credits for graduation. That has been reduced to the state minimum of 22 credits. So it's as if everyone can qualify for a differentiated diploma without the paperwork. We're still going to require the Future Ready core requirements with your 4 English, 4 social studies, 4 math, 3 science. And then the exams are not going to count as 20% of the final grade at this point, as they have been waived. And y'all, I had a hard time wrapping my head around this part. With our career and college promise classes, we have students who are enrolled with Forsyth Tech and continuing to do their classes online. Their high school transcript will have a PC-19. They passed the class. Their college transcript will most likely still have a numeric or letter grade. So that was a little bit tough to understand. We finally did get our flexibility on CTE testing. That came through in our CTE Moodle today. If possible, I'm still researching how we can possibly get some of these credentials for our students. The hardest one right now that I'm running the most roadblocks with is centering around our nursing fundamentals classes. They require a letter grade. They require a number of clinical hours that we have not met yet. So I think the students will pass the class. But at this point, I'm finding only roadblocks in getting them to take that credential. The other thing I looked at was with, like, for example, our carpentry classes. Some of the students have already done quite a few credentials in there, but there's several left. So I'd like to make those credentials a priority as we start into the next school year. So if they were taking core and sustainable and still needed additional credentials from that course, that would be the first thing we try to knock out in Carpentry 1 moving forward. So again, I want to make you aware of what our seniors were seeing. With the juniors, really 6th through 11th, we are still assigning grades until we have further guidance from DPI. At this time, I'll open up for any additional feedback from Ms. McGee, if you'd like to share about elementary, and then we can hear from Ms. Collins on our EC.
So for elementary, we have communicated quite a bit along many of those guidelines. We've talked about the criteria with the principals. We're really focusing on feedback, even though that doesn't mean that there aren't grades out there. But we're really talked about being just right now with deadlines and really being not so strenuous with those types of things. And if a child doesn't turn something in, making contact with the families, and those types of things. Now, again, that doesn't mean there hasn't been some grades, and there won't be some grades, because there will be. But it's more on the feedback side of things. Our focus is really continual feedback, continuing to monitor engagement and participation, and not just on the academic side, but reaching out to our families and seeing those emotional sides of things as well. I met with the elementary principals last week and went over positives and negatives and things that are going well and things that we need to work on. Several of the principals have done surveys with families and teachers and are trying to calibrate the amount of work that's going home within classrooms to the right amount for their students. So that's still a process. We're just now finishing 2 weeks of the online instruction. So they're all working on that. I'm meeting with all elementary teachers this week to do the same thing. So everybody is working really hard. I've been impressed with many of the things that I have seen. Lots of videos that have been shared with me. These teachers are working really hard to do their best to complete online instruction and teach students in a way that they never knew that they would be providing instruction. So we are working on a way to continue to communicate with parents on progress, again, with the focus being engagement and feedback, and just continuing to hopefully mitigate learning loss.
And I will say that with these first 2 weeks, I mean, this is very new for several of our teachers. Now, some of our teachers have been doing Canvas courses and Google Classrooms for a while. But I think now we are figuring out the balance of the appropriate amount of work, how much is too much, what is too little. And right now we're finding that balance and really focusing on trying to communicate to our schools. I reached out to all the principals with secondary just to ask who are your unreachable students? What percentage of your students are not being reached? I've heard everything from 15% to one school that had only one student that they had not been in contact with. and they actually sent an officer out to do a wellness check on the child because that was the only one in the school they had not heard from, and that's a secondary school. But we're tweaking the process constantly, and I think we all have been on a very steep learning curve as we started this.
I would like just to take a brief moment to thank all the EC staff in Stokes County. They have worked tirelessly to figure out how to best serve our students in this new world of remote learning. Our teachers and administrators have been providing important connections to students and their families. They've been problem solving around barriers and putting forth a tremendous joint effort along with their gen ed colleagues to create these remote learning opportunities for all of our students with unique needs. I'd also like to thank, I have an incredible, knowledgeable and hardworking colleagues in the special programs office. They've spent many hours meeting virtually, attending webinars, creating monitoring tools, researching virtual learning platforms, and interpreting guidelines, along with the everyday of answering emails and phone calls and those things to ensure that all of our local practices and our procedures align with those state and federal expectations. Everybody just has gone over and beyond the call of duty. This entire process of moving to remote learning, it changes every day for us. The guidance we've been given from NCDPI, the Exceptional Children's Division, and the guidance we give to teachers can look different on any given day. So the entire Stokes family, EC family, has been incredibly flexible and forgiving and patient as new information about processes and procedures develops and changes each day. Our task to do the best that we can do in this unprecedented time to make learning accessible to all of our students, but we also have to keep thinking about the health and safety of their families and their staff and our staff. And we, as an EC department, have emphasized communication and transparency with all of our parents and families and doing what's best based on those students' needs, their accessibility, and the support system they have at home. In your packet, you have a COVID-19 updates document. This document is a short list of the information that our department has kind of problem solved around, developed, and shared and discussed with EC teachers, related service providers, 504 coordinators, pre-K teachers, school psychologists, behavior support staff, administrators, and central office staff over the last month of school closure. We have been real careful to advise all our staff to document everything, document lapse meetings, meetings held, evidence of remote learning, progress monitoring, communication to parents, and all educational opportunities and services that we've offered. Staff is also keeping service logs up to date with time served. And all this will keep us ready to help future problem solve around maybe extended school services and compensatory services. So the updates document that you have there goes into more detail around communication, compliance monitoring, remote learning, and related services. And just as I said before, I wanted to point out that earlier communication and guidance that we gave to staff early on, like mid-March, would look different than the beginning of April. And so we're just kind of rolling with it as it comes out and sending it out to our staff. So I'd be happy to have any feedback or questions.
I'd like to just add that, when you're switching to this type of digital platform and we have technology needs, we need to get computers in the students' hands, we need to find hotspots. Ms. Barker has been spot on through all of this and making some real difficult things become a reality. Ms. McGee has been Google Meeting herself into insanity with our teachers and with our principals. And it has just been a real team effort. And again, it's not perfect. We're still tweaking it, but it's a work in progress and a lot of work has taken place.
Okay. Ms. Knight, you want to start? Any questions, comments?
Yes, sir. I'll ask Terry. I noticed here in the notes it mentioned occupational and physical therapy license boards adhering to HIPAA requirements. So which
Yes.
which platform is usable for like teletherapy?
So the speech therapist, their board has relaxed those requirements. And so our speech therapist, we have recommended they use Google Meet. It is FERPA compliant. But for our OT and PT, those boards have not lifted those requirements. And so we have, we're using doxy.me, which is a HIPAA compliant platform that is free.
That's great. Are you getting good participation, or like, can you say what percentage of students that need these therapies are currently receiving them in week 2?
We have had feedback. It just varies. We've had some therapists say half or more than half. Some, and this is when they first started. We just started with all of this because we've had to make sure that we had all of our compliance issues in place for our therapists. So they really didn't start until after spring break. And then we are in that first week that we came back, we made sure that everyone was getting parent permissions and those kinds of things. So we really kind of just started, but just from the ones that we have heard, it's been, I would say at least 50% or more of those students are being served.
Okay, that's great. And I'm sure any hurdles, I mean, it will just be addressed as quickly as possible, whether it's accessibility to internet or what are some of the, I mean, is that the main issue you're running into really?
Yes, accessibility and sometimes support at home for our younger kids, making sure that they are available. But we have continued, we've told our staff to continue to, trudge on, do what you can do something. If it's packets, if it's phone calls, if it's teletherapy, if you can, whatever they can do, they are doing, and we're just documenting everything so we'll know what we have done.
Yes, ma'am. That's great. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I just personally wanted to thank, the staff, students, parents, teachers, administration, everyone for working hard during this difficult time. I know the entire board is greatly appreciative because this is just, uncharted waters, like everyone has said. It's just a tough time. We want to put safety first and continue to have good relationships with our students and put them first. And I just appreciate everyone and thankful for y'all, and just keep up the good work. One question that I would like to ask about is what little bit we do have for some of the younger grades and middle grades. I know, like Doug said, it's still very unclear, but can we communicate what we have a little more to parents? Because I do think there's some questions out there, regarding, is every assignment, I mean, I know we as parents want to treat it like every assignment has a grade, but to what extent, and maybe some parents, aren't as comfortable with certain material with older students. There's all different scenarios. So maybe communicating a little more on what we do have to parents.
And well,
Is
really
that-
looking at the one thing that does make me a little uncomfortable with that is just waiting for the communication at this point from the state. They gave us very clear communication for our seniors and how to handle those grades. I think we're all still waiting to hear what the decision is for May 18th and additional guidance on how we should handle grades based on that decision. There's just so much still up in the air. My initial thought, and Dr. Rice, feel free to chime in on this, but to leave everything as much business as usual. As a parent, I do go in and look at the Power School grades and try to see any feedback through that grading system of what my kids are doing. I do want us to be as flexible as possible and to help parents. That's one thing that our teachers and our administrators are preaching about is flexibility. But I would like to keep things as consistent as possible within the grading, as far as being matched to what we had before, and make the decision when DPI gives us that guidance.
Well,
But again, I'm a suggestion.
and I echo that. And the reason for that is we don't want to put, and Ms. Knight, we've discussed this, Mr. Rose, Ms. McGee, myself for hours the last week. And we understand the frustration that parents may be feeling, wondering, what's going to be the end result of all of this. But I think a greater frustration may end up being is if we tell them something now and then DPI mandates a change in that. And our seniors are a perfect example of this. When this first happened, as administrators, we had a conversation with the high school principals, well, with all the principals. But one thing that was very clear with the high school was, we've been doing online learning now for several years. We had the training with the Friday Institute when we got the Chromebooks. As we've instituted that, we've gotten very good at this. Our students understand the platforms we're using. And their recommendation was to keep grades going as is. And so we decided that as a group that was the route we were going to go. And right before we made that announcement, we see the statewide announcement that seniors would be given a pass-fail grade. It went back to March 15th. And, and so the rug was kind of yanked out from under us. Luckily, it happened before we made an announcement, because if we say one thing and then the evening news says something else, that causes confusion and frustration. And so, for example, if we were to say right now, okay, we understand that you may not be able to do this stuff. We're not going to count any zeros. We're not going to hold you accountable for any assignments you don't do. And then DPI comes back and says, okay, you're back in school on May 18th, and we expect normal report cards through the end of the year. And we've told people, don't worry about this. That could end up being detrimental to some students. So, we're very frustrated as well. I'll just say that we're extremely frustrated at the lack of guidance that we've gotten. And it would be one thing if it was guidance, but like with the seniors, we didn't get guidance. We got a mandate. And so we weren't given the choice there of what did we want as a district with just some guidance from DPI. We were given the mandate. And so we're kind of hesitant. I mean, I think we all as administrators, again, we've talked and we were very comfortable with a plan for kindergarten through 12th grade and a differentiated plan. It wouldn't look the same at every level, but we were very comfortable. But then when DPI started sending out mandates, we backed off of making announcements because we didn't want to say something and then have the rug yanked out from under us again. But we are stressing with our teachers that individual assignment, they need to be flexible. If anybody is contacting you and saying that there are rigid guidelines that we can't meet, please ask them to reach out to their child's teacher first and explain their situation. And then second would be the principal. Again, I know that we've reinforced this with the principals weekly in our meetings with them. We are having weekly virtual meetings with our principals, and this is a topic at each of them. And then if they're still not getting any relief or satisfaction, or, feel like the schools are still being real rigid, tell them to reach out to us individually, and we can, handle those individual things individually, those isolated incidents individually. But on the whole, again, what I'm hearing, the feedback I'm hearing from parents, and again, I read some things on social media here and there, but on the whole, I've been getting a lot of positive feedback from parents that teachers are being very gracious with deadlines, plenty of open windows, offering lots of ways to get support, whether that's emails, phone calls, voice chats, video chats like this. And again, we encourage that if a parent, we never intended for parents to take over the role of the teacher during this time. A parent can be there to support, but the teacher still has the role of the teacher, and they want that role. So if a kid is having problems logging in or understanding something, to reach out to that teacher, again, through emails, through their dojos, through those learning management systems of Google Classroom or Canvas. And our teachers are there to help and to support through this time. And that's what they're doing. And again, if they're not, they need to let the principal know, they'll need to let us know so that we can get that fixed. But I'm having a lot of support saying that is going on, and that's what we're wanting during this time.
Yes, sir. I've heard lots of positive things regarding that. I think it's just still that uncertainty of the grading, that's the undertone. And maybe if parents just better understand that once we know more, mid-May, then it will be communicated. But again, just to work as diligently as you would every day, with whether it be homework or other projects, as if they would be graded as normal. I mean, that's the best approach, but I mean, that's the most questions I've got personally is regarding grading. And I know that some of the high school underclassmen, I've heard some feedback that parents wish that, they could get a grade that would at least help their GPA, maybe based off of what their grade looked like in March, and then with completed assignments this time, rather than the whole, COVID-19 instead, getting an actual letter grade that can attribute or help their GPA.
Again, that's why our administrators did not want to do a pass-fail in high school. We knew that students would be successful. Many of our students would be successful in this format because we've been one-to-one for a while now. Again, I have heard from those students who have said, my grades right now and through this online learning are very good, and this would have increased my overall GPA, and now it's being frozen despite the fact that I have straight A's right now. And in honors classes or college classes or AP classes, and won't be getting the GPA boost that I'm working so hard for. And I totally sympathize with that. Again, we were given a mandate that wasn't our decision, which is very frustrating to us.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Messick?
Well, a lot of what I was going to ask has been covered, so I really appreciate all the information. I do want to say that I would like for Mr. Rose and Miss McGee to, if they can, stress to, especially the elementary teachers and the middle and high, that the children are getting all of these assignments from some, say the elementary school could be getting as many as 9 assignments, because it wouldn't just be their 3rd grade teacher or their 2nd grade teacher. They've got other teachers that are putting assignments on there too. And sometimes this has been overwhelming to parents and students. And I think everybody's well-meaning, I do. And I think that everybody wants to put the best lesson on there they can. But some students still struggle. And I think that those students are the ones, well, I just think a lot of students are getting may be overwhelmed with a lot of assignments. And so maybe if Miss McGee and Mr. Rose could kind of address that with principals, because one hand doesn't know what the other one's doing, so to speak. The teachers don't know what another teacher has assigned. And I know in high school, a lot of the students that are doing these assignments are getting a whole list of things to do that's really taking, a lot of time to do, which I'm sure they want to fill up their day. But I just don't, want them to just keep overwhelming the students. Do you know what I mean about that, Mr. Rose?
I do, and we have made some communications out that really, when we're talking about screen time, that gets to be monotonous, and you do need to limit the amount there. I hear what you're saying with some of our encore. You have your core area teacher plus your encore. We're looking at 6 teachers.
Right.
And if we are all making assignments.
One teacher that, I've gotten a call about had sent a PowerPoint that was 89 pages. So I'm just saying, maybe if, you could kind of just speak to the principals and let them speak to the teachers, because as you just said, they're getting them from all these other teachers, and it can be overwhelming to a student if the assignments are incredibly long or they're incredibly detailed and want a lot of detail back. That's not really flexibility.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we can share that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Ultimately, when I think about this, to me, 12 to 16 total hours for the week, and focusing on the essential standards and essential skills to move forward. If we can get those things implemented and do 12 to 16 hours total for the week, I think we're being successful.
I agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Better.
First question is for Mr. Rose. When you first started this topic, you said and explained the grading. I understand what the state is saying for the pass or fail type of letter grade, but you said you couldn't wrap your head around that's what we're doing for high school, but the Precise Tech is doing a numerical grade. I'm confused about that. Why is that? Why was that hard to understand? What am I missing there?
Well, the thing that strikes me as odd is a lot of these students, we were talking about this with, for our juniors, for example. That in your freshman and sophomore year, you have your honors classes and you'll get 0.5 additional GPA points for those. When you get to your junior year, that's when you really kick in on the AP and the college classes. So it's just kind of strange that with our seniors who are in these college classes, they're going to get a grade in one vein, which is the college, and then they're not going to get a grade for the high school. That's just kind of an oddity to me, even though they're still doing the same coursework.
Okay. But colleges are relaxing entrance requirements too, are they not? Or is that just with the test scores?
Well, I'm just thinking, and everybody's going to be, with this being a statewide issue, it does level that playing field. Nobody's getting those extra GPA points this semester across the state.
Okay. And then thanks for explaining that. And then Terry, thank you for you and your department. I know this is just a difficult time for every teacher throughout the whole, teachers everywhere. I can't imagine as a former EC teacher how difficult this is for some of them with our county's accessibility. So I appreciate your staff and working with our teachers and support personnel on serving our students. I used to think that I could relate well to our teachers, but given the last couple of months, I realize I have no clue what is going on there now, and I just appreciate all of you working with our teachers and staff, students, and parents through this. And I echo a lot of what Ms. Knight said. You had a lot of good points there, Cheryl. But I was thinking of a lot of the same things. So thank y'all very much.
That's time off too. So that part I get. I get it's tough.
Mr. Langford, please mute your phone.
Okay. Words don't describe the appreciation I have or the entire board for everything that's being done. So everything that I was wanting to discuss has been discussed. So that being said, thank you is not strong enough. So we'll go on from there. All right. Discussion of handbook revision.
All right. So the way that I handled this year was I created a Google form and I sent that to principals and asked them to share that with their staff. And I took every single one of those recommendations and pulled together a committee to discuss those. And I did put these down word for word for what the teachers or staff members had put on that form. And we sat down as a committee and went through each one of these, and I'll do the same and give a very abbreviated form of it. Several of the teachers, in particular, K-8, discussed unexcused tardies and unexcused early dismissals. We still have a real, that's kind of a sticking point because they would like to see a certain number of unexcused tardies or unexcused early dismissals who are just getting picked up for random things. They would like to see that count or equate into an unexcused absence. And they said that, while we may have seen some boost in attendance prior to COVID, it seems like there's a rise in unexcused tardies and unexcused early dismissals. The toughest thing with this, and I explained this to the committee too, was that our Compulsory Attendance Act doesn't support that. We can tie that into our attendance policy and our waivers, but when it comes to compulsory attendance and standing before a judge, showing a false number of absences that are also based on tardies doesn't help us. To me, the tardies is an extra piece of information that supports that case. And, when they were talking about this, they were talking about those students with the multiple absences, the ones who were showing up daily late. But that was one thing that we discussed. The next thing, it came up about the wording around head lice and our response to that. And our school nurses are drafting something there for us. The next two, C and D, talked about some of our lower level offenses. And I believe it is the type 4, where it just has a long list of offenses. And basically, it sounded like students were getting additional warnings based on the policy. So what I wanted to do there in talking with the committee was just to discuss this with our administrative teams. And as they're entering their information in Power School, as even though there may be 8 or 9 offenses listed on that page, when 2 different offenses show up, but they're both in that tier, then you would still go with the punishments down the line. So that, that was one of the things that came up. Next up, our guidance counselors wanted some information on how to handle threats made to students, staff, and building. I think mainly what they were looking for were some assessments that we could use, almost like screeners, like we have with our Columbia screener now for like a suicide assessment. Then one of our counselors was going to look into that, and we were going to evaluate some screeners and some different things there. The dress code did come back up. There was a reference to needing a more specific commentary on sagging pants and underwear. However, it does say specifically in the new dress code that underwear are not to be showing. And then spaghetti straps came up. I did think it was rather funny that one of our principals did ask that our stick figure have knees, just as a reference point. Page 42, food brought from outside of the school. I talked with Miss Dillon about this. And then the biggest one that our conversation really revolved around, and I think we all know that this has been somewhat of an epidemic, is with our juuling and vaping. I put some stats in there for you. We have 101 total offenses for tobacco juuls this school year, with 15 repeat offenders, and that was as of February the 26th. It's a difficult offense to catch students at. And, we talked about, should this be a separate policy? And Ms. Tedder, I know we had talked at one point about Forsyth has made this even a drug offense. They've labeled it as paraphernalia, but I think they have reduced consequences on that first offense. And the big question I had was, are we educating our students well enough for them to understand the consequences of these electronic nicotine delivery systems? So I started talking to Derek Vickers. Derek, with Insight, has been to several different conferences and looked at multiple policies. And one of the resources that he shared really stuck with me. And you can see this one online. The name of the program is Catch My Breath, and it has the educational components by grade level. And as I was reading through, they have posters available for students. I went ahead and shared this with our all of our health teachers in the county, just so they would have access to it, and they could start reviewing that if they wanted to. I know that we're already doing some education surrounding this in our health classes, but I do think some additional resources would be a great thing. So at any rate, those were the things that we had discussed. You can see some of the changes that are listed there. I will open up for any questions.
Ms. Knight?
Doug, did you say, are you considering, encouraging specifically your health teachers to utilize the program, Catch My Breath?
I wanted to get their feedback on it, because I know there are some resources that they are already using and educating. I just want to make sure that it's not just on tobacco as far as smoking and dipping, because those have really lost their appeal with students. It's these electronic nicotine delivery systems that are, that are really influencing these kids. That's what they want to have.
Mm-hmm. Because
so
I
want to evaluate and then incorporate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the need to, and efforts to strengthen the preventative education. I think all of us agree on that. And then you're mentioning looking at increasing, using the opportunity if someone is in school suspension, and then just your health classes I'm thinking, that rather than a week or two of covering something, somehow just continually, delve further into it. I mean, even if you get into long term as far as negative effects years from now and disease processes and, things like that come later in life from the choices now, I'm sure that's touched on, but just any way to really emphasize that message.
I agree. And one thing that you just mentioned, Miss Knight, reminded me of a conversation that I had with Michael Richardson, where they are doing some education within in-school suspension. One thing that happens, we do have a tobacco cessation class that students have to complete in order to avoid a discipline consequence. But we have to reach a certain number of kids before they go through that. So we really delay the consequence of the class for a long time. I like the idea of having an educational component in the in-school suspension time that they are serving immediately following the offense. So that is something that I definitely want to take a long look at and get something in the hands of our schools so we can start educating immediately with that first offense.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Massey?
One thing I'd like to say about the juuling, you mentioned that we might need a separate policy for that. Is that correct?
I did. I've written them on number 4 and 5, but in my opinion, they still need the same consequence. And I did run that by the committee that day as well.
And the consequence would be in-school suspension or?
So it's still varies. It may be the same as what it was. First offense, 1 day in school, and this is for middle and high school. Second offense, 3 days in school, 2 hour after school tobacco cessation class. Third offense, out of school. Fourth offense, 3 days out. Fifth offense, 5 days out. And then it does list about what happens if you do not complete the tobacco cessation class. But again, I'd love to add an additional component in school.
What would that be? Oh, you would. Okay, well, I don't think that's a bad idea. This is becoming a real problem in the middle school and the high school. And if we could somehow deter people from doing that at this young age, it would benefit them greatly in the future, even though they might not see that. I think it's our job as educators to try and help them with a problem of this magnitude. And I appreciate all the work you've done on this handbook revision. Thank you.
Well, and I will say, with going through it in such detail, with the dress code, most of the principals, when these things came up, as soon as we talked about, the sagging pants, the principal said, our dress code covers that. And then when we talked about, the straps, they really did not want to go that route. The folks sitting around the table for that meeting liked our dress code. Like I said, it was just humorous to me that the only one was, it'd be good to have knees as a point of reference, just to sort of point out where that where the shorts should fall to. But yeah, it's I think our handbook is in good shape. I do think this tobacco is one area we can tighten up, especially with the vaping.
Okay, and then I did want to bring up the food brought from outside the school. I don't think that we can control what people send from home. Can we?
No. No, I do not believe we can.
Doug, may I intervene just 1 second?
Sure, please.
While we can't really intervene while we can't regulate necessarily what they bring from home, there is language in the statute that talks about the bags or what it's brought in. So we can't allow folks to bring, bags from McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or places like that. But you are right. We're not going to go through individual lunch boxes and things like that. But there are some guidelines that Lisa and her staff do have to follow. And one of them is we do not allow food from outside sources or bags or the cups, those types of things. So that is one thing that they do have to, and we'll have to continue to monitor.
But if they put them in their own lunch pail or lunch box, there's not much you can do about that, is there? I mean, if they're sending a little hamburger from McDonald's for their lunch in their lunch box, with a bag of potato chips,
No, ma'am. Like I said, we're not going to go into. Our staff would not go and look through people's lunch boxes, and we're not going to do that. No, ma'am.
Well, that's good. Okay, thank you.
And Miss Messick, typically, I think the way that would be handled too, and please correct me at any time, but if we see like the McDonald's wrapper as it comes out, we're not going to take the food and say that's not allowed. The response would be, can you wrap this in some different packaging? I don't know if the kids around you get to go to McDonald's that often, and we don't want to do their advertising for them. I've never had a parent to fuss with me in regards to that if it's voiced the correct way.
Right. I appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Ms. Tedder?
Doug, again, thank you so much for having the committee this time go through all of this and getting input from the teachers through the whole manual. I really, really appreciate all that. And can you just tell me the consequences on the last page? Are those the same for 4 and 5 then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And the administrators. Okay. And the administrators were okay with those consequences for right now?
Yes.
Or as a draft?
Were.
And the in-school component, I totally agree with. What in your mind would that look like though?
I think we could have a panel of our health teachers to put together a packet that they would work through, because I would want it to come from the experts, and I think they would understand the consequences as well as anyone. I think that Derek Vickers would be a great resource. He has been thus far for me in finding resources and different things that we could share. I mentioned Catch My Breath. That was my favorite of the ones that he shared, but he probably shared more than a dozen different programs with me.
Right. And Derek is an invaluable resource that we have available to us. And yes, like if they were in ISS and they would watch that online there or something like that.
We could have it online. We could have a paper pencil packet. There's some different options for what we could develop. Right. If they not just watch something, but take some kind of assessment afterwards to make sure that they are comprehending and paying attention and spit back out some of the stuff that they learned would be quite helpful with that, and right.
Hopefully eye-opening. So thank you very much for all that work, and I think we're heading in the right direction for that. But then the tobacco cessation class, we just have to wait until there's a number of students to take that, like you said. And that's after the second offense, or are we talking about after the fourth offense one?
It is the second offense, and let's see, hold on just one moment. After school week's ordinance, we assigned 3 days for the first offense, 5 days for second and third.
5 days for second.
Let me read that last paragraph again, Ms. Tedder.
Okay.
I believe I have a typo there. I believe it is second and fourth. That's the way it had been written in before.
Okay. Second and fourth.
Yes.
Okay.
I just need to fix that in the paragraph. Thank you for finding that.
Okay. And then, but Insight would handle the second offense class as well?
Yes. And I believe,
Okay.
Dr. Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe those go to Christy, and then she shares that over to Insight, and they communicate back to her.
That is
Okay.
correct.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. And then, I mean, there it's totally up to Insight to administer that class. The school would house that, but otherwise not be a part of that. So if there was any kind of parental responsibility, it would be through that class.
Yeah.
Like if the program included any parental involvement or participation, because that's what I've envisioned in some kind of policy is putting some of this back on the parents, and if they're not aware that this would be a big eye opener for them too, and then they could be a big part in helping the prevention. If they are unaware that their child is consuming, a team effort, if you will, between the school, the parent, and Insight. So.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is a great step in the right direction to help with the preventing of this. So thanks again.
Well, and I talked to Derek about splitting them out, and he mentioned being very specific as far as, with these electronic nicotine delivery systems, defining that as a separate policy, kind of making it its own offense. And I like the idea of that too. But I also want to get posters and some different things for the school so that we make it very clear, and put these health consequences in front of our kids. They need to see it. They need to see it regularly so that it will stick, and so they can make the wise choice not to begin.
100% agree. Thank you.
Thank you.
I agree 100% with we've got to put it out. We've got to put it out where they can see it, and we're going to let them know the consequences. So for that, I'm wholeheartedly in agreement. The part I'm having trouble with, Doug, is a knee on a stick figure.
Yeah, that was kind of a joke at the time, I think. But that was the only recommendation to our little stick guy.
Okay. Okay. I'm good with that.
Now, I will tell you the part of the board that I had some trouble with, and that is the very first thing with the unexcused tardies. Just because we're not supported by the Compulsory Attendance Act, I know that was a sticking point with some of our teachers on the panel and some of our administrators and counselors too, but I don't see how to enforce that when the Compulsory Attendance Act doesn't support it.
I agree with that, Mr. Rose, because I don't think you can say someone was absent when they've been there part of the day.
Right.
If the child is there and leaves early, I know it's aggravating, or if they come in late, as a teacher, that is very aggravating because the child misses out on a lot of instruction, either being late or leaving early. But once they're in attendance in school, I don't think, and I agree with that Compulsory Attendance Act, that you cannot then say they were absent just because they were tardy or leaving early.
Well, and they're wanting to set a number like 3 to 5 would equal one unexcused absence. And I do understand the frustration. I mean, as a principal at Sandy Ridge, I had students who might show up 45 minutes late 4 days a week. We did reading first thing. They were behind. So, I mean, I just hated to see a child and a parent messing up their reading instruction that way and handicapping them. But, you know, I don't know what the solution is on that. I don't think making 3 to 5 an unexcused, and that's just my opinion. That's contrary to a lot of the members of the committee.
Doug, just for point of reference, if Dr. Rice and the board, or if the board is interested, I do believe there are some districts that apply or that utilize a local policy regarding unexcused tardies. So it may be worth investigating. It may be worth making some phone calls to see if some other districts do have a similar policy and how they make that work, if that's something the board and or Dr. Rice would like for us to do. But I do believe there are other districts that have similar local policies in place.
Well, I know when I was looking at this initially, Forsyth County has a policy. I can't remember if it was 3 or if it was 5, but they do count it as one unexcused absence. And I'm assuming that would just calculate into their attendance policy, because you couldn't apply it, you know, in the court when you're looking at compulsory attendance.
Yeah, my understanding is it's more of a local type decision. But back to Ms. Tedder's point, from an earlier conversation, or earlier in this conversation, I think by doing that, you put some ownership back on the parents in regard to the tardies. But there again, if it's not something that the group wants to pursue, then we don't have to, of course. But I do think there are some other districts that have either figured out a way or have made the decision to do that. So if that's something that Dr. Rice and the board would like for us to pursue, we can make some phone calls and see how they're applying that or what they are applying.
Well, actually, last year when we were having the conversation about the handbook, my recollection that we actually eased up a little bit on the tardy punishments due to, until a kid was potentially a junior or senior, didn't have a lot of control over their tardies to school. Now, in between getting to class in middle and high school, yes, but when a parent is bringing a kid to school, and a lot of those that are those daily things, if a parent says, well, I have to be at work at 9, I'm not going to drop off my kid at 7:50 and then go sit out in front of my work for 30 minutes. I'm going to be 15 minutes, split the difference, and my kid will be 15 minutes late, then I'll be 15 minutes early. The board didn't really feel like we should keep the punishing the child for the behavior of the adults. And so that was kind of the direction, if I recall correctly, that we went last year when we kind of eased some of that in the handbook.
And Dr. Rice, that makes complete sense, because you do wind up punishing a young person that can't control when the car leaves or when the parent drops him off or picks him up, per se. So that is a valid point.
Okay, anything else? All right, moving on to action item A, approval of federal fund budget amendment.
Mr. Rogers?
Yeah.
We did miss one item. We missed item B on discussion D, the device management. That is in your packet if you just want to look at that and ask Ms. Barker questions, but we did include that, the extra devices that we handed out as part of our COVID-19 response in remote learning.
Okay. Ms. Barker, you want to get the question off?
I just wanted to add that we gave out over 1,000 devices in our elementary schools. I would like to update, since the numbers, I had to submit the numbers, they have changed. Mount Olive is now 85, Nancy Reynolds is now 80, and Pine Hall is 50, and Poplar Springs is 64. We did do a survey to determine those needs, and then teachers, principals, media coordinators reached out to those students that we didn't hear from to make sure each kid had a device if needed. Middle and high, you can see the numbers are low. They've been 1-to-1 already, and many students were using their own devices. River Street did put our hotspots in: Pine Hall, South Stokes, Sandy Ridge, Piney Grove, Nancy Reynolds, and West Stokes. We did have some partnerships with some community members, Slate Funeral Home, the Stokes Y, the King Public Library, the Danbury Library, Walnut Cove Library, downtown Walnut Cove, Francisco Community Center, the Corner Cafe in Westfield. We had several to reach out to us to provide their Wi-Fi as well. I also want to thank our tech team, the instructional technology facilitator, Delilah, the technician, Sonia, all of our media coordinators and South Data really have been on top of it. And, you know, if an app has been needed to release, pushed out to all the Chromebooks, Sonia's been able to do that for us. Any questions?
Okay. Ms. Knight, you have any questions?
Do you foresee our numbers growing, and do we have more devices if, you know, more students or parents reach out in the coming week?
The schools have not contacted me of other needs. They've been really good about communicating through their media coordinator about needs, if additional Chromebooks have been needed, and no one has reached out since then.
Okay. Also, I just want to say I love to see the creativity by many of our schools' media coordinators with YouTube videos and things from schools, reminding students how much, you know, that they miss them. I think anything like that to communicate with students and let them see some familiar faces that, you know, care about them and are concerned in these times is a great thing.
They did a great job, and many of them have incorporated digital citizenship even more so now, since more kids are on, and many kids probably are home alone working on these as well.
Yes, thank you all.
Ms. Massey?
Well, I just want to say to Ms. Barker, thank you for all the hard work you've done, because that has been a lot of work getting all those hotspots established for students and making sure everyone has a Chromebook that needs it. And you've just done a great job, and thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Tanner?
Karen, do we have a percentage of, do we know a percentage of students that don't have internet?
I don't have a full percentage, no ma'am. Each school did their surveys and they have their results at each school. So no ma'am.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for all of your efforts. I know that it's been trying and difficult, but I appreciate all the work that you and the staff have done on that. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm going to concur those sentiments. Do you have a guess of what percentage do not have that? I mean, ballpark. We're not going to hold you to it.
We'll find out this week.
Okay.
I just think that would be helpful. That would be helpful for us to know, but also our county commissioners to know, so they could maybe press to get that to remote areas sooner rather than later.
Right.
Yes.
I concur. Okay, anything else then?
Can I add one thing?
Go for it.
Just that, you know, I was impressed with the schools coming up with ways to help students that do not have internet, as far as like saving teacher instructional videos to flash drives that get exchanged weekly that go along with the paper assignments, you know, like if you can't log on, like especially for elementary. I thought that was great, as far as not having to find, you know, a hotspot to download. You have everything on that flash drive, all the instructional videos and the day of the week, and it all kind of corresponds with everything. So they've, you know, done a great job there.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, with nothing else being added or said, we'll move on to action. Approval of federal fund budget amendment number 3.
Mr. Rogers, once we remember, we added item F, the Qualtrics survey, to discussion.
Okay. Yeah, we did. That's the problem with online. I can't, if I put whiteout on my screen, it's going to make a mess. All right, Qualtrics, I think we touched on it. Ms. Knight, what we talked about was there was a lot of people that, or 2 of the board members and myself felt that the questions weren't quite directed enough. So we're trying to give Ms. Jessup some direction as to what she'd like to go. So this time I'll open the floor up for you. If you have any comments on the Qualtrics survey.
Did you all give examples of certain questions that are too vague? Is that what you're thinking? It needs to just be more specific?
No, we just wanted to add it to the discussion agenda for bringing up these topics, but then in order, you go first. So,
Okay.
I mean, what's your feelings on it?
I mean, just glancing through it, I would love to spend more time reviewing it further. You know, I see where a lot of the questions are appropriate as far as questions like my director helps me in my career development, or overall, I feel that my career goals can be met at this district. My district provides me with the opportunity for learning and development, you know, very clear, good information to be gathered from this. So at this time, I don't have any further questions.
I mean, is there any way you'd like to see it modified, or before we're sending it back to Ms. Jessup to go back to Qualtrics to find out whether they need it updated? So do you have any suggestions, or you go with it?
What I'm seeing thus far out of the questions, I'm good with it. Not to say that there could be a topic added. I can definitely email Ms. Jessup either later or even tomorrow if needed.
Okay. All right. Just if you would, please copy the board on that. Ms. Messick.
Yes, I'd like for Mrs. Jessup to talk to Qualtrics about qualifying the person or persons that the survey talks about. When they say my director encourages collaboration on my team, then I'm not sure if a teacher would think that's their elementary director, that's their high school director, or, you know, who is the director? And then it says my team. So different groups have different teams. Is my team the, say all the second grade teachers? Is that their team? So I think that some of these things needs some type of qualifier on the paper to let the person that's taking the survey to understand. Also, it says, I have confidence in the senior leadership team to make the right decisions for this district. So that would probably need to be qualified. Who is the senior leadership team? And there's just a lot of things in here that I feel like that needs to have some work done on it. I mean, if I were taking the survey as, say, a teacher or anybody there in the school, an assistant, somebody in the cafeteria, then I'd want to know exactly who they're talking about. So that's what I'd like to ask Ms. Jessup, to ask them to qualify who the person is. If it's they say the principal, then they need to say the principal or direct supervisor or direct leader of the school or something to qualify who the person is. And that's basically my suggestion there.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Jessup, did you hear?
Yes, Ms. Messick, I did. And I do believe, Board, that if I work with Ryan Jolly, who's our representative with Qualtrics, on the terminology, changing much of the terminology from business terminology to school terminology, then I would also ask, Board, if you are you comfortable with those main 11 core areas being addressed? So think about that as well before the work session. Those were collaboration, communication, customer focus, employee engagement, growth and development, inclusion, or in other words, their thoughts, are they working in a diverse environment? And then retention, or their intent to stay, job enablement, performance and accountability, strategic alignment in terms of what the strategic plan is for the school system and how that relates to their job. And then finally, I think the last area asks, do you feel that this survey will be followed up in terms of the feedback that they've provided? So that may some very good suggestions thus far that I'm very comfortable going back to Qualtrics and discussing and getting this ready for you.
Okay, and then also they talk about their team, and so they might need to be able to qualify what their team is, and because some people are resource teachers, so would their team be all the other resource teachers that are like them in the county? Is that their team? So I just think if they could switch this over to education instead of business, that would be really helpful, but they need to qualify who the person is that they're talking about. And I just feel like that'd be more helpful than to be vague.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Tatter.
I agree with those suggestions made by Ms. Messick, and I think Ms. Jessup has a good grasp on what we're asking for. Education is a different language in and itself, and then each district is also has their own, if you will, dialect. So if you could Stokes County it, how we define things here, it would be very helpful. And if that needs, pardon?
Yes, ma'am. I understand. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Melissa.
I mean, I think the last two board members pretty much summed it up. I mean, if they could define it just a little bit tighter so that we can actually record what the input is based on their direct report twos or whoever that may be, we'll be a whole lot stronger off. So thanks for your effort.
You're most welcome. Thank you, board members.
Okay. Now, I think we're finally ready. Third time's the charm. Approval of the federal fund budget amendment. And I had messed that up all three times.
Okay, this federal budget amendment increases our federal funding by $13,405. And as you are aware, all during the year, we receive additional funds. Funds are taken away from some of our federal grants. And that's what this is about, is we receive the information from DPI. And also it's a lot of code transfers. We've been allowing our schools to make Title I changes. And some of those changes are here, and then I'll have another amendment coming at the next meeting with more changes.
Okay, do I have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the federal fund budget amendment.
I'll
Easy for you
second
to
that.
say, 'cause it's good for me. Tough for me to say, y'all flew through it. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? So moved. All right, on to the accreditation. Ms. Messick, I think you had the wording when you tried to move it forward. I mean, anybody can make the motion. I just know you started the ball wrong.
Well, help me out here.
So you're making a motion to use DPI for our, if I understand you correctly, that is, to use DPI for accreditation for the high schools and eliminate the former provider for all other grades. Is that right, Dr. Rose? I mean, Mr. Rose? Did I get you what you need?
The one question I would add to that, and we don't have to determine this tonight per se, do we want to include Meadowbrook in the accreditation as well?
I would say no to that.
How do you want to word your motion? You and Ms. Knight will dictate whether it's medical.
So that would be at the traditional high schools and the early college.
Is that Mr. Rose and Dr. Rice's recommendation?
It is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I make the motion that we use DPI as our school accreditation and move away from the formerly Advanced Ed Cognia and include all the high schools and the early college. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
So wonderful to me. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right. Information and announcement.
Good evening, board members. I just want to start out by saying publicly, I want to thank everybody, all the staff members and all the work that's been taking place. It has been, it's been a very unusual time and everyone is working very hard. And also want to say thank you to the board for your support during this trying time. And we appreciate you as well. Just have a couple things for you. One thing in particular, please be reminded that your next board meeting on May the 4th is a morning meeting that is scheduled for 8:30 a.m. on May the 4th. Then we also have provided for you an updated PMR. You can look through that. It details our enrollment. And then we also, as we do each month, give you an updated calendar of where we stand as of now. So that's all the announcements we have, unless you have any particular questions.
Any questions from the board?
I had a question.
Okay.
Dr. Rice, do you have any idea when there might be anything forthcoming from the governor regarding schools again?
The last I heard, the last time we had a conference call with the governor, he did not mention reopening or remaining closed. The most recent information that I've received is that we should expect some guidance about that the last of April, 1st of May. We have been having at times Thursday conference calls with superintendents. The governor has joined us on a couple of those. And so I hope that by the 30th, we will know something, April 30th, we will know something moving forward. But I've not been given any indication right now of whether or not his intent is to remain closed to the end of the school year or to open up before the school year is over.
Okay, thank you.
Question, Dr. Rice.
Yes, ma'am.
Given the possibility that, maybe school could start back under some terms, is there efforts being made to look at a reasonable process for maybe even staggering students or just any possibilities like that? Or will it just be total guidance from the state? I know in one of the conference calls, maybe not conference calls, but TV broadcasts of the governor, maybe last week, it was mentioned the potential of the state being divided into like districts that are higher risk versus lower risk and letting the state reopen along those lines. Just are there going to be discussions, preliminary discussions on maybe how to address something like that, or just wait for total guidance from the governor's office?
Right now, the one thing I would say is a positive about this situation is the increased communication between superintendents with each other, with DPI, with the governor, all of that. I'm having up to 4 conference calls a week with different groups of superintendents, and we are discussing as a region what that could look like. But again, we might develop a plan and then be given a curveball of saying, what we're going to do. I mean, again, we were told to redesign how we deliver instruction in 2 weeks the last time. So we have not heard that guidance. I did see that on the news one night, but we have not gotten any guidance of that from either DPI or the governor about staggering entry based on regions. And so until we hear something, we don't know something. But we've been talking about it at superintendents, and I plan on talking with Mr. Rose and our principals about it this week. We are meeting weekly on virtual conference calls as well about what some different things could look like, just to start the thought processes going. If we're told, we need you to come back to school, but keep less than 100 in your buildings at a time. That's very easy for some schools and a lot more problematic for others. Or if they said don't have any rooms with 50 or more people in them, that would eliminate, gymnasium gatherings and cafeteria settings. And so we're brainstorming as superintendents what it may look like, and we'll start that process with our staff this week. Again, I hate to waste tons of time on something that may never happen. It's not like a 2-hour delay or a 3-hour delay for weather that we know we're going to have. Well, we spend time, each summer and spring developing those schedules because we figure it's going to happen throughout the school year. But we will discuss those and let that thought process go in through people's minds. I know that other thing that people are wondering about graduation, and we are doing the same thing there. We are planning for the worst and hoping for the best, but not knowing exactly what the rules may be in June at that time. It's kind of hard to put final touches on anything. So as administrations, as schools, we're talking about possible different ways of recognizing graduates and graduations. But as of right now, we're only closed through the 15th of May. And so we're hopeful that graduations will occur, other than the early college, which we've already moved a week to fit the May 15th comeback time. That they have tentatively scheduled their graduation for May 22nd at this point. But again, until we get to the end of April and find out what the state is going to do, is whether or not we're going to be released from our stay at home or not, we've not gotten there. So that's a long way to answer of, yes, we're discussing a lot of possibilities, but until we have final guidance, we certainly can't make any final plans.
I understand. Thank you guys for being proactive though on that. I know you can't focus all your time on the what ifs, but just a discussion and a thought and being proactive. Thank you.
It seems like all we're doing is spending our time on what ifs, to be honest with you.
Well, hang in there, but thank you guys.
Okay. Did a motion go into close? Well, Fred, you want to read your speech?
I'm ready. We need a motion under General Statutes 143 318.11 subsections A1, A3, and A6 to consider matters required by state or federal law to be discussed in confidence, for discussions with the board's attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege, and to consider the qualifications or performance of a present or prospective employee of the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. This time we'll entertain a motion to go into close.
I make a motion to go into close.
Thank you, Ms. Messick. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Nobody opposed? So moved. I want to thank everybody that won't be entertaining themselves tonight with us in closed session. Thank you for your efforts. Okay, take about a 5-minute break and then we will resume